about to begin our Viking Age Shield lecture. I'm very happy for you to be here, and I'm happy also because I'm joined today by Tom Jersø, who has been the craftsman behind assembling our reconstruction. My name is Rolf Warming, and I'm an archaeologist. I'm the project leader of the Reconstruction project that we've started with Trelleborg Viking Fortress. And I've been interested in Viking shields for some time. So today I'm very happy to bring you some news about some of the research that we've been undertaking and the reconstruction process itself. Hopefully, the lecture will be about 45 minutes. Maybe we'll go a little bit over time, but you'll have to bear with us. So I'm the director of the Society for Combat Archaeology. We're an organization which is researching and disseminating subjects and issues related to conflicts in the past. We also have a photo album to go along with our reconstruction project, which you can find on Facebook. So please give us a like there, and you can scroll through some of the details there if you're interested. Now, today we're going to talk about the Viking Age round shield specifically. And this was the predominant shield type during most of the Viking Age. Later on in the late Viking Age, especially after the year 1000, the Norman kite shield becomes the popular shield. But we'll focus on the round shield today, and we'll talk a little bit about the background for it, the construction in general terms, and the archaeological finds that can give us an insight about this. And then we'll go into our fantastic Viking Age Shield project that we launched together with the Trelleborg Viking Fortress, the Nationalmuseet of Denmark, which aimed at bringing you the first fully authentic Viking Age shield. And this has been possible due to a number of reasons, but mainly because of some new research which has come out. And then we'll open up the floor for questions in the end. Now, martial practices during the Viking Age, which we take to be about 750 to 1050 AD, were of course apparent in the many plunderings and invasions of the Vikings and the Scandinavians. But even here at home, in the Scandinavian homelands, martial practices and combat was, of course, a prerequisite for consolidating realms and for security within national borders. So we can say that combat really did have a place also within the Scandinavian homelands, and not just out when raiding and so on. Very central in this whole process is, of course, the shields. And we recognize this immediately as an iconic element. We see this in our modern day interpretations, even the most simple kinds in the cartoons and Lego toys. And even a Viking ship doesn't seem to be a Viking ship without these shields on its side. It's a very iconic element as far as our interpretation is concerned. And even during the Viking Age, it seems that picture stones and other iconography has many of these shields depicted. So it was also seen as a very important element. And we see this also not only in the iconography, but in historical sources, such as the later Icelandic sagas, where they appear very frequently in the texts. And we see this in the archaeology itself, the remains. And we have shield remains from different contexts, primarily burials, such as the Gokstad ship burial, which you see here on the screen, which was found in 1880. And there were 64 shields accompanied this find. And we also see it in deposits and in settlement finds. But mostly it's in these burials where shields are found. They seem to be mostly of something that we could interpret as a practical function, but of course ceremonial shields could also have been made for specifically for the funerary practices. In basic terms, when we talk about the Viking round shield, the Viking Age round shield, it is something that is part of what I have coined as the Germanic flat round shield tradition. And it goes much further back than the Viking Age. Usually within research, there has been a tendency to separate Iron Age shields, early Iron Age shields, from Viking Age shields. But this is actually a tradition that goes way back into the early 3rd century in Scandinavia. And the Viking Age round shield tradition then merges with the later buckler tradition in the High Middle Ages, it seems. So it is a continuation of a tradition which changes formats during the different periods. Some of the first shields that we have of this find is from the Illerop Ode find, which is a sacrifice made in the Iron Age in the early 3rd century. You see a photo of it here on the right. And generally, when we talk about the round shield, it is a relatively flat and thin and more or less round shield type. It has a very large diameter and consists of several boards, and it is held by the handle. It's not strapped to the arm in different ways that we see later on. And during the Viking Age, we see a round shield which is less ornate. It has fewer fittings. It's not as fancy as you might find in the early Iron Age. It has a simple iron boss. Sometimes it can be of organic material as well. Usually consists of coniferous softwood, which is light and flexible, and then it usually has a long handle, which tends to span the total diameter of the shield. There are, of course, exceptions to this, but this is the general tendency. The different components are quite simple. What is usually found in funerary contexts are these shield bosses. These are the ones that survive in the ground for these 1,000+ years. During the Viking Age, we have some very simple shield bosses. These 4 main types can be seen on the screen right now. They tend to be of iron. And as you see, they're quite simple and hemispherical. Later on, or in earlier periods, you will see some very odd shield bosses with protruding apices and whatnot. The shields can also be equipped sometimes with different sorts of metallic fittings, such as these handle terminals that you see on screen on the left, and also handle fittings that are supposed to reinforce the handle. Sometimes the handle itself can also be of a metallic composition. But for the most part, the shields are mostly of organic material. Another metallic component that we can find, especially in the Birka material from Sweden, are these metallic rim fittings, either in copper alloy or in iron. And the purpose of them is somewhat disputed. It could potentially be to hold some of the hide in place, or to reinforce the shield. Sometimes you see the metallic fittings all around the shield, and sometimes there's only 3 or 2 or even just 1 of these fittings. And one of the important elements when it comes to the organic components is the hide. And when I say hide, I mean the different skin products. Until recently, we have not had an idea of what this actually was, what sort of nature the hide was. But from our recently published study, we see that we have at least evidence of a Viking Age shield that was fitted with leather, specifically cattle leather and sheep's leather. And you see here on the right, this is from a earlier Iron Age shield from Bornholm. So not Viking Age, but it shows this construction concept quite clearly. It's a sort of sandwich construction. So you have the hide on both sides, a very, very thin layer of skin product on both sides. In the case of this Viking Age shield, which you see on the left from Birka, you have an additional rim of very dense cattle skin. When it comes to the wood or timber for the shield, there are actually very few finds that give us a clear insight into the full shield construction. The Gokstad finds is probably the most important one and has been the one that has shaped our understanding of Viking Age shields, not only because there were many shields found in this ship burial, as I mentioned, there were 64, but also because it's such an early find. It was found in 1880, and our understanding of it has been very much shaped by the interpretations by Nikolai Nikolaisen, who interpreted the shield. And you'll see his illustration of a shield reconstruction here on the screen. Unfortunately, Nikolaisen, he only devotes a very small part of his otherwise excellent publication to Viking Age shields and discusses them in very general terms. There are many details which have been missed, and the shields have also been very commonly declared as ceremonial shields, which were not ever intended for combat and functional use, primarily because they were so thin and fragile. I beg to differ, and I've actually taken a look at these shields in Norway in conjunction with our project, and also come to some interesting observations and conclusions. Some details which have been missed since 1880, among other things, these perforations in some of the shield boards, and also the complexity of the tapering systems on the shields, which we'll get back to later on in this presentation. Another very important find, which is actually not from a ship burial or a funerary context, is this shield from Trelleborg Viking Fortress in Denmark, dating to the late 10th century. Late 10th century, early 11th century. And this was found in a deposits, probably intended for making it possible to traverse a rather wet part of the area. It's actually equipped with a rather odd handle. As far as Viking Age shields are concerned, it's this quite short handle, about 35 centimeters in length. I would approximate the original length to have been about 40 centimeters. There's a small piece of it missing. But in the center, you'll see this very fine decoration, this carving in the middle. Another very important find is actually not a Scandinavian or a Viking find, but this shield from Latvia, dating to about 875 AD. This shield was found in a bog, and it's probably one of the most well-preserved shield finds from prehistory. It's preserved almost fully intact and consists only of organic material. So it has, again, these shield boards and two hide covers. It also has a layer of vegetable material between the front facing and wooden boards. And although it's not Scandinavian, it gives us another insight into these round shield constructions. So based on this and the evidence that there is, and the new research publication about shields or hides in shields, it's actually now possible to reconstruct fully authentic Viking Age shields. So we've had the audacity to call this project the Viking Shield, the first authentic shield in 1,000 years. So this is the first project where we can actually reference all elements back to an original find. So this is quite different from previous shields in that sense. And I'll just run through some of the source material before Tom takes over and explain some of the assembling and the reconstruction process. For this material, we used Scots pine from Norway. This was taken from a about 250-year-old tree. It was slow growing, had max 2 millimeters between the annual growth rings, which means that it's very sturdy. Many shields and or copies of shields are made from timber that has not been slow grown, so the growth rings are very far apart. So we've taken this into account as well, as is the case with the original finds. And this timber has been radially split with axes. The boards were shaped according to the dimensions that we have from the Trelleborg shield find. And what's very funny about this is also that when we talk about round shields, they are actually not exactly round. They're more a little bit oval, so they don't have this completely round shape. So this was also something that we had to account for in the process. Unfortunately, the Trelleborg shield is not so well preserved that we can take a look at its complete edges and see how they were shaped. So for this, I had to go to Oslo and take a closer look at the Gokstad shield finds, and we find that it actually has a rather complex system of tapering the very edge of the shields. And Tom, he will explain a little bit more about that later. The iron itself, it comes from 40 kilograms of iron ore from Denmark, which then produced a bloom piece of about 4.5 kilograms. And this was then later forged into a billet. It was Jens Jørgen Olsen who extracted the iron ore, which was then sent to Tord Bergelin from Thor's Forge, who then shaped it into a billet and the final shield bosses. And here you see the billet then from which the shield bosses can be formed. Here is our final shield boss to one of the shields. The hide had to be based on the new publication, so special attention was given to this. It was Carl Carlson, who I believe is also here in the lecture, who prepared the hide in accordance with this data with the help of us who have been writing the publication and the School of Conservation. He tanned calf and sheep leather for us with the help of birch bark. The leather is about 1 to 1.5 millimeters thick. So with that, I'll hand it over to Tom, who can explain to you a little bit more about how the assembly and the construction of the shield proceeded.
Hi, I will talk about the construction of the shield. Some of the things has Rolf always talked about, but I will go through it. I will start with the timber. As said before, the timber is made of 200 to 300 years old radial splits, slow-growing pine from Norway. And it's the same as the Trelleborg shield. The planks are planed and cut close to the measurements of the Trelleborg shield, with a thickness from 8 to 9 millimeter. The carpenter René Lerche makes this part of the project. The shield is glued together with my homemade Catein glue, or cheese glue, as I prefer to call it. I have chosen this type of glue It's actually very good wood and leather glue. And as far as I know, it's the only historical glue that's water resistant. We have written sources of this type of glue dating back to the 11th century. As far as I know, we have no trace of glue on the original material. Modern tools were used only for the beginning and the roughing of the shield. To the final works, I have used copies of historical tools to get closer to the original methods of making and also the effects it will have on the shield when you use it. These copies are based on tools from the Viking Age, such as rasps, files, and spoke shaves. The tapering is asymmetrical and has a deep tapering on the back side of the shield. On this picture, you can see the tapering at the sides opposite of the grip, and it goes from the edge to around 2.5 centimeters into the shield. Here you can see the tapering at the grip, and then the tapering is deeper and longer on this side of the shield, so it's different. So both the tapering is asymmetrical around the shield. The hole for the hand is made according to the Trelleborg shield, and it's a quite small, slightly oval, around 9 to 11 centimeters, just enough for a hand to grip and not room for much else. Here we have the finished shield blades, a bit oval as it's found on the Trelleborg shield. The measurement is 89 centimeters and the other is 84.5. The skin is glued and sewn on again with cheese glue, and it's sewing onto the shield board on the lower third of the shield, like some of the findings. The borders of the shield are also sewing. However, on the finding, it looks like it wasn't sewing all the way around, but 2 places on each half. There's no trace of thread, only the holes in the shield. I have used waxed linen thread, but thread of linen bast, leather, nelle, sinew are all good bites on what could have been used. The grip is based on the Gokstad findings, where more of them are fully preserved. It makes sense to use a Gokstad, as we can see how the grip have been shaped. The length of the grip handle is almost the same as the height of the shield. The grip is also glued on using cheese glue and then nailed on using buck iron nails. The original findings, trace of nail marks has been found on the original one. The nails were created by blacksmith Jesper Jørgensen from the Viking Ship Museum in Roskilde. And here you can see some other details of the shield. The shield buckle has been recreated based on findings from Trelleborg, and like the nails, it has been made using buck iron, and it's made by Thor Bergelin. Finally, as you can see here, we have the finished shield, and here you can see all the seams there is on the board and on the edges. The shield has a weight around 3.8 kilos. I guess that's quite close to the original weight of the Viking ship. All materials used are based on archaeological find, or as close we can get to them. There are many modern makers of shields that go for very, very light shields. It's probably more based on a modern dream of what a shield have weighted, in my opinion. It's still lighter than archaeologists before estimated, where they said a shield would have the weight around 5 to 9 kilos. What I can tell about the finished shield, as you see here, Its slightly oval-shaped asymmetrical tapering shows an extremely complex shield, which itself is a weapon for active shield use, which support several of the latest theories about using a shield in historical martial arts. That's what I have to say about the production of the shield.